In Search of a Traore for Zambia, a critique of the elite theory. Fellow Zambian citizens, compatriots, workers, peasants, and all allied strata, may I simply say, the Zambian proletariat. In discussing the search for a Traore for Zambia, I begin by quoting the philosopher Hegel, who once said that the only great men, the individuals of great importance, were those in whose aims and actions there is universality necessity. It is they who should be heroes, in as much as they drew their aims and their vocation not simply from the calm, regular course of things, sanctified by the existing system, but from a source whose content was hidden and had not as yet developed to the point of present being, from the inner spirit which was still below ground and was battering at the external world as at an enclosing shell which it must break. Unquote. Of course, such figures were thinking people who understood what was necessary and timely, what was true for their own age. Captain Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso, the emergent and undisputed leader of the Pan-Africanist movement, rightly and squarely belongs to these ranks. His selflessness, defiant and uncompromising leadership, and love for his people, coupled with an elaborate program of rapid national development, have caught the attention of many people in Africa and overseas. He has indeed projected himself as the bulwark of the new hope for Africa. In Zambia too, there are many admirers and followers who feel equally inspired by his leadership style and pragmatism. This is why we, at the Progressive Labour Congress, P.L.C., the Progressives, in appreciating his work, ask, is Zambia indeed in search of a Traore? How and where can we find him or her in our country? What criteria would we use to unveil him in order to distinguish him from false and deceptive Traores who want to take advantage of our people by pretending that they can change their original spots to become something new, when all along they have been dancing and kowtowing with the most reactionary agents of neocolonialism and imperialism. Can a leopard change its spots to become something else? Of course, the answer is no, it cannot. For if it tried to do so, probably it will evolve into either a hyena or a jackal. Zambians must be on the lookout for hyenas and jackals in our politics. For as we approach the 2026 general elections, many will come in many shapes and colors to deceive the people. Fellow Zambians, compatriots, workers, and all the allied strata, and the proletariat at large, one, if not the most notable quality of leadership exhibited by Traore is the quality of love for his fellow man, his Burkinabe men and women, or put more ardently, his love for his country, also known as the land for the upright people. I dare say Zambians are divinely lucky. Our founding father of the nation, Kenneth David Kaunda, has provided us with the blueprint, criteria, or basis on how we can identify one among us as Zambians to lead and follow in the progressive footsteps of the Burkinabe leader. Not that such a leader should be a direct copycat, but that he should learn from the raw courage and wisdom of that leader. Kaunda taught the nation through his humanism and socialist principles in his style of governance of the nation for us to love one another, and this is the basis and foundation of our motto, One Zambia, One Nation. It is the pass for the Zambian nationhood. Let us listen to what he taught about man. He says, and I quote, "Man means my mother, my wife, my children, my friends, the citizens of my country. They deserve my faith. They shall have it." Unquote. The word humanism is derived from Latin humanus, meaning characteristic of man, and marked by compassion, sympathy, for consideration for other human beings. Originally, the term humanism referred to a cultural movement of the Renaissance, and later it was used to describe a system of views which emphasized the value of man as an individual, his right to freedom, happiness, and the development of his abilities, and which regarded the good of man as a criterion for assessing different types of social relations. And socialism as a socio-economic system is inconceivable without the unfolding of the creative abilities of all, without man's harmonious cultural, moral, and physical development. It is highly significant that its principle is from each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs. And since socialism requires that everyone should develop his abilities and creates the conditions for such development, it rules out the placement of individuals in their social hierarchy and therefore consequently truly humanizes man. Ideologically, capitalism was born under the banners of humanism. When the bourgeoisie was fighting its way to power, it promised freedom, equality, and happiness for all. Its ideologies attacked the system of feudalism, demanding that serfdom, the personal dependence of the peasant on the lord, should be abolished. However, when the bourgeoisie came to power, what it promised became a reality only for a few, the rich and the propertied class or people. That is what has become of bourgeois humanism, also known as capitalism today. It is being used to justify the enslavement of the individual on earth, and at best it holds out hopes for freedom only in the next world. Can there be anything more inhuman than this? Certainly, no one can defy the laws of history. Every people have their own historical and other peculiarities and conditions of development, but they are only the specific national forms in which the general objective social laws operate. Notably, Zambia and other independent African countries appeared on the world political map from about the 1950s, 1960s thereabout. However, after the first few years of free development passed, it became clear that the economic and cultural legacy of imperialism was an upheaval and a drag on national building and reconstruction. to uphold sovereignty and put an end to neocolonialism, it is necessary to back up political freedom with economic independence. This has been a tall order for the African leaders and other developing countries. Captain Ibrahim Traore, against all odds, is putting this into practice and consequently has become a target for the most reactionary and counter-revolutionary forces sponsored by the imperialists who champion status quo for Africa. In the same vein, Zambia needs a revolutionary leader who is not out to impress the imperialists and go out to them with a bow in hand begging for what can be said to be predatory capital. A leader who will take absolute control of our natural and mineral resources. A leader who will invest the huge incomes from these endowments in the rapid industrialization of our country for the good of all the Zambian people. Not for just a few so-called captains of industry or businessmen. Fellow Zambian compatriots, workers, peasants, and the proletariat, for several decades, if not centuries, the structure of the world economic ties was shaped under the prevailing influence of the imperialist powers and monopoly capital. The predominant strength of imperialism enabled it to create a specific mechanism for exploiting the natural and manpower resources of the dependent countries. And this led to a growing accumulation of wealth at the one pole of the world capitalist economy and of poverty at the other. It is highly characteristic that in its long existence, bourgeois economics has given virtually no serious attention to the problems of relations between the metropolitan countries and their former colonies, now independent states. Zambia is, unfortunately, in this quagmire. The existing state of affairs was and is still very much accepted as something quite natural. No questions were asked or are being asked about the international relations of exploitation and oppression, it being assumed that these were and are universal, everlasting, and immutable. Captain Traore is defying this diabolical system of exploitation, and in his quest, he is leading emergent young and promising politicians on the African continent to question why Africa should continue to subsidize through the supply of various raw materials to Europe and elsewhere for the people in those countries to enjoy a higher standard of living at the expense of the Africans. It is in the context of this that Zambia is perhaps in search of a Traore of its own, one who is well schooled in political economy and well versed with the problems of the developing world, non-conformist, of strong will and sober character, confident and uncompromising and highly decisive. Zambia now needs a leader of raw courage and unequaled patriotism. This leader must unequivocally demand in his tour of duty: 1. The sovereign equality of all states. 2. The self-determination of all the peoples. 3. The rejection of seizure of territories by force. 4. Territorial integrity and non-interference in the internal affairs of other states. 5. Each country's right to adopt the socio-economic system which it believes to be most appropriate for its own development. 6. Condemnation of the policy of discrimination and subjugation. 7. the complete and permanent sovereignty of each state over its natural resources and the whole of its economic activity, including the right to nationalization. 8. The right of all states and peoples under the yoke of foreign occupations, alien and colonial domination, to restitution and full compensation for all the losses inflicted to their natural and other resources. 9. Control over the activities of the transnational corporations by taking measures in the interests of the national economy on the basis of complete sovereignty of each country. 10. The granting of foreign assistance without political or military strings attached. Fellow Zambians, compatriots, workers, peasants, and all the allied strata, the proletariat, we at the Progressive Labour Congress, P.L.C., the Progressives Party, believe we have a Traore for Zambia. We invite you to scrutinize and meet him in the declaration of our principles, which form the bedrock of our party's program of national building and reconstruction, proceeding from our understanding that the mode of production, material goods, that is the foundation of society's life and development, and that the working people are the main productive force and the actual makers of history. I repeat, proceeding from our understanding that the mode of production or producing material goods is the foundation of society's life and development, and that the working people are the main productive force and the actual makers of history. We hold that the masses, the people themselves, solidly backing their leader, are the true heroes of any revolution. Our Traore leader remains staunchly opposed to the capitalist socio-economic system projected to Zambians as the best suited model for our country's development. He remains opposed to the elite and other affiliated social Darwinian theories of development pursued by the current and other previous bourgeois-oriented governments in Zambia that depict the working people as a throng of misfits in the struggle for their existence, and discriminatory or racist theories that call working people, peasants, and all allied strata as an inferior class, a head over which stands a superior master race or class. Consider for once the much talked about Bill 7 and search in it for the accommodation of workers, peasants, and those other less privileged people. You draw a blank. They are not important, perhaps, or qualified to go and serve as members of parliament. After all, they cannot utter a single word of English. To them, perhaps, it's good riddance. That's why they've been forgotten completely. Our leader denounces contemporary bourgeois sociologists who, through their theories, see in people only a destructive negative force, a mass that does not think but must obey authority. To them, only the elite, those with degrees, diplomas, certificates, are considered the most gifted part of the people, the nation, and can be the only vehicle to the creative and positive force or principle. Some of our current politicians and national leaders are of this mold and this orientation, They are the disciples of the American sociologist Elie Chinoy, who once taught, and I quote, "In every society, some are identified as superior and others as inferior. Everywhere, some rule and others obey, although the latter may possess varying degrees of influence or of control over the rulers." The contrasts between higher and lower, rich and poor, powerful and powerless, constitute the substance of social stratification. End of quote. Chinoy regards this division of society into higher and lower, rulers and the ruled, as an eternal law of social existence, its source being the difference in men's natural abilities. Thus, in the elite theories, bourgeois sociology reveals its class character, coming forward as an apologia. Our leader dismisses and rejects this concept as absurd and false. Instead, he points it out that a person's standing in society should not be determined by wealth, social origin, or the type of activity he engages in, but by the social results of his work, whether he is an ordinary worker, a peasant, a marketeer, a farmer, a carpenter, a bricklayer, doctor, accountant, scientist, etc., etc. Fellow Zambian compatriots, workers and peasants, and all allied strata, and the proletariat, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, that most distinguished son of Africa, a true Pan-Africanist, long before and ahead of his time, made the following observation, I quote, "It has often been said that Africa is poor. What nonsense! It is not Africa that is poor. It is the Africans who are impoverished by centuries of exploitation and domination." End of quote. Zambia is abundantly rich in natural and human resources. Our people are impoverished because of the capitalist way or path we have chosen for development. The capitalist way means wealth to very few privileged and propertied class, while to the mass of the people it means poverty and ruthless exploitation. The domestic or local upper crust of the bourgeoisie exploits the working people and allied strata or groups by working with foreign capitalists. And this local bourgeoisie or business people links its own interests with those of foreign capital, transnational monopolies, and neocolonialism. The capitalist way thus legitimizes economic dependence, with the result that colonialism is revived though in new forms. Practice, however, has confirmed one of the main principles of socialism, is that there is no nation in the world destined to either be a master nation or a servant nation, or a master race or a servant. The experience of the peoples of many of the non-capitalist oriented states or countries convincingly shows that progress in development along this path, the socialist path, is possible and can be quite successful. All we need is indeed a Traore for Zambia. Come 2026 presidential and general election, Zambia shall be saved.